Welcome to Transformation Tales, a podcast by Shanda, where we celebrate the heroic journeys of storytellers. I am your host, Dumi Mabena, and each week we'll bring you inspiring stories of creators who found their voice, overcame challenges, and transformed through the power of podcasting. Get ready to be motivated as we explore the growth and triumphs and the amazing stories of the people that inspire us to do what we do. But Amber, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me. As I said before, you're one of us, and one of us is a person that is passionate about collecting a story and doing all that they can to make sure it's as perfect as they can be to share with the world. So thank you so much for being with us. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm really excited for this conversation, and I'm glad that I have the opportunity to talk to you again, and just to share stories. That's what we do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For everyone listening, maybe introduce yourself. I know who you are, but maybe for everyone listening, introduce yourself briefly if you can.
Sure. My name's Amber Key. I am a podcast host of A Bright Idea podcast. It's a show where I talk to entrepreneurs about the aha moments that launch their businesses. So it's a business podcast because we're talking solely about how that person got started, their industry, all the ins and outs of that, being an entrepreneur. But I really love to dive deeper into the person. And I always find that where people began they go down several roads to get to, where they are now. And so that's a little glimpse of A Bright Idea. But yeah, I'm Amber.
Love that. And why I was doing my research, of course, and trying to get to the essence of Amber herself. And I was curious, why entrepreneurship as a concept to dig into? Why was that the thing that you said, okay, I think this moment of having a bright idea is so important, but why entrepreneurship in general? As a subject matter to dig into?
I think that's a huge question, and there's many answers. When people ask me that, I'm like, all right, which version am I going to give today? But I think I've always, I'm an entrepreneur myself. I grew up starting businesses. I was the little girl with the lemonade stand. I had a greeting cards business. I won business plan competitions throughout my adolescence. And so I've always been fascinated with people that have an idea that turn that idea into something profitable. And during my graduate studies at American University. It was during COVID, in the pandemic, when people really started to really think about what work meant to them and were leaving their 9-to-5s in droves. And there was this emphasis on giving back, or like giving funding, and sort of pouring this attention to Black businesses and Black entrepreneurship. And that really catapulted this idea of a bright idea. A bright idea its sole focus is not on Black and brown entrepreneurs, but being a Black entrepreneur myself, I really it means a lot to me, and so that's sort of why entrepreneurship in itself is why I went down this path for the podcast.
Got you. And yeah. I want to talk about, maybe your parents. Are they entrepreneurs themselves?
No. So I grew up with two parents that were in sales. My dad just retired. Yes. But in sales, you're running a business.
It's very entrepreneurial discipline. Very entrepreneurial discipline.
It is. You have your own schedule. You're cold calling. You're selling yourself. Like all of the things. My dad just retired from a 36-year career in medical device sales. And my mom has sold media sales and worked in education for a very long time. So, I grew up with negotiation was a very big thing in my household.
So I assume everyone in your household is a great communicator, at least to some degree. I love that.
Yeah.
So when I was doing my research, I learned that, of course, you're passionate about entrepreneurship, as I said before. But I think there was something that made me interested in why, I guess, even before A Bright Idea, stories became a very important avenue that you wanted to express yourself. So, for example, as you mentioned, During college, you studied journalism, also media and communications during undergrad. So I was trying to figure out, why was that a particular thing that you wanted to spend time digging into? And you're still doing that to some degree now, right, with your day job. So maybe talk me through when you're in high school, wanting to make that transition into, okay, I'm going to college now, or for grad school, why you've been really set, of course, as entrepreneurship, but I'm interested in like stories, communication. Where does that stem from?
I think I've always been a storyteller, but I was always drawn to how stories move people. I think, when you think of businesses, everybody has a business, and oftentimes there's so many businesses in particular markets, and it feels like oversaturated in some points. But what really stands out is the story, and really understanding. I mean, that stories drive business. And so I think that was always why I wanted to go into journalism, was just to the human aspect of it all, and really finding out the digging into like the deeper points, which is the story.
Yeah. And so you've learned that, of course, stories help drive everything. And I mean, I interviewed somebody recently. His name is Aniaba, and he shared something very poignant, which is, we're really storytelling creatures, and we make sense of the world through stories, and we're always sharing, whether it's on Instagram or we're always wanting to hear, listen, and share stories, which is a fascinating thing. What I found interesting for you is how you married this idea of storytelling with business, and knowing that it's more important sometimes than the actual product. And that's kind of really insightful. So I guess I'm going to dig into a bright idea a little bit more now. So you started that bright idea. And I think when we interviewed you the first time, you said, look, my big vision for this thing is to find a way to give information, specifically, I guess, to people of color, because sometimes we start companies, and then we get them to a particular point, but sometimes the disconnect isn't a lack of desire, but it's information specifically pertaining to fundraising, which I thought was very insightful. Where did that stem from? Like that insight to say, okay, I think I need to inform people about this. Was it the pandemic, or was it kind of slightly different? That essence behind starting a bad idea for that specific purpose. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it came from watching my community and seeing all of these people have these grand ideas, these really great ideas, and being able to start it, but couldn't take it to the next level. And so I thought that there's this huge knowledge gap, and it kind of, when you and I were talking a few weeks ago, you spoke about working in startups, and the guys that you were working with, the difference was that they had gotten their MBAs, and then you hadn't had your MBA yet. And so just the way that they operated business, the way they operated meetings, their decision-making processes, I mean, even questions to ask when you're going into a bank to get a loan. Like, a lot of people, for you and I, who are always are in it, we know those things. It seems very basic to us, but for the average person that just has an idea and wants to know how to launch their business, get it off the ground, and doesn't know that, how do they go and find that? And so that was sort of the beginning of a bright idea, was really wanting to bring on people who have had success in their business and be able to storytell and tell us the ins and outs of the operation, so that other people looking to do the same can do it without spending a bunch of money going back to school or whatever. But yeah, that's sort of the idea.
I love that. I'm actually very passionate about the subject. The subject of democratizing information. I think sometimes I like this medium specifically because you get to talk to a person that is in a particular space, that is doing a certain thing, and then ask them information and then share it with the world. And then a person doesn't have to get a degree, quite frankly, to be able to get that information.
Right.
Which I think is so powerful. And I wanted to find out about, I guess, in the beginning, when you were saying, okay, I have I listened to one of your earlier interviews and you said, look, I had these dreams about manifesting these things. And then my sister really encouraged me a ton. So I want to go back to the beginning.
Mhm.
You had a bright idea to start a bright idea. Who were the people that encouraged you to get going? To kind of say, okay, do it. I know you want to tell these stories. Go for it. And when did that start? And who encouraged you? You know?
Oh my gosh. It's funny that you're asking questions that I've actually thought about recently. I was thinking about all of the people that I've had behind me that have helped me get to where I am today with this podcast. And it's really only been a year, but I would say first and foremost, my family, most specifically my sister. During COVID, when I kind of came up with this idea, my sister and I were living together. And some background on her, we're both producers. She works for the Commanders on their broadcast side. I work my day job at CBS. And so we're always creating. I mean, there's always a camera, there's always a microphone around. And so we were already kind of coming up with these stories on our own in our apartment together. And then I just needed an outlet. It was something that was like, I was so passionate about. It was keeping me up at night, quite literally. And she was like, so when are you going to start? And then I also have to give great credit to my professors. They saw, time after time, when you're in grad school, as you get these assignments and you have to and in journalism school, you have these articles and these topics that you have to cover. And I just kept going back to business and how, if it wasn't venture capitals, it was small business loans. It was like constantly this topic surrounding entrepreneurship. And I had a really great podcast or audio journalism professor, as well as my capstone professor, that was like, you don't really have to go pitch this to a local media company, which is who I was working for at the time. They were like, you can start this on your own. And so I did.
Wow. And
Yeah.
kudos to them for seeing, hey, we can see you have this energy. Just do it yourself, as opposed to having to. And I guess that what we're looking, sometimes you want validation of ideas from, I guess,
Totally.
big institutions to say, am I right? Am I right? What do you think about my idea? What gave you I mean, of course, maybe it was your professor who gave you the courage to be like, girl, just do what you want to do. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, amazing that professor did that. But I want to ask, what have been the most important things you've learned, I guess, from doing this? Because what you find is that you embark on this journey and you want to capture these stories and share them with the world. Then, of course, you gain so much and your audience gains a lot. But I want to split those in two. And I'll first start with you. What do you feel that you've gained the most by, being in the seat, asking all the questions and hearing all of these stories? What has it done for you? Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest thing that I've gained is the relationships. I mean, I am friends with people that I've interviewed. And I think personally, I've grown so much in the last year just in talking to other people and what my listeners are asking, the questions that I want my listeners to know, but I'm actually asking the questions for myself.
The listeners want to know if you like, I just really want.
Yeah, no, it's so funny. Last week I had a financial advisor on the show, full transparency. And I was like, when I was talking to him, I was just like eating up everything he was saying. And I was like, okay, well, I need a financial advisor. So can we work together? So now, we have that relationship. And so I think that that's one of the biggest things that I've gained is just friendships, but also a network.
Yeah. It's a very fascinating it's a very beautiful medium in that it helps you, it enables you to meet all these people that you wouldn't otherwise have opportunity to, because I think people love the idea of sharing their stories with the world. And I think after you've shared your story, it's impossible to not be friendly with the person that's asking you questions. You're going to be cool on at least on a superficial level. You're going to be friendly with each other for the rest of your lives, right? And that's beautiful. And now I want to ask, one of the best things about, I guess, interviewing a person and hearing their story is sometimes you think, oh, that was wonderful for me. Then you get a message from, Instagram or some other third party platform where a person says, hey, I listened to this one recording and this is how I felt. Thank you so much. Can you think of any positive feedback, any moments you've gotten really positive feedback that has been really validating for the thing that you're making?
Yeah, I always get really positive feedback just from people that were like, wow, I didn't know, I never knew how to go out, and I didn't know what business credit was, or I didn't know how to go out and get a loan. Or, my very first episode was about, it was kind of controversial, but it was about, not controversial, that's not the right word, like provocative. It was about female health.
Yeah.
And so what was so interesting,
there was more than female health. I think it was about more than that.
Yeah, it was about infections regarding women. Yes.
Specific. Yeah.
And among my friends and among this person that I had on the show, I was like, yeah, we talk about these things all the time. But the amount of men that came and commented and talked to me and said, I had no idea that this is what you guys were experiencing, and I learned so much, and thank you, was surprising to me, because I thought that it would be quite the opposite. And so I'd say, that's the most rewarding thing, is like I'm helping people, and people are also learning things, which is what it's all about.
Yeah. I mean, I will say I was listening to I listened to that one, and then I listened to you talk about feedback that you got off the back of our episode, and that was great. Then I also listened to the most recent one, and for that one, I listened to a bunch of your interviews before today, by the way.
I appreciate that.
I thought they were really great. The one that spoke to me the most, I think it was because it felt like I could resonate with Bilal, who was sharing his story. And I think there was this thing. He's African, came he's an immigrant.
Yeah.
Went to college, and like just his story was just so poignant for me, and his mentality towards life was so poignant, and it just resonated so much with me. So I appreciate that you go out of your way to tell a lot of these stories. I guess now I want to speak on the difficult parts. I think a lot of the time we like to glamorize the work, and the things that go into, the byproducts of the work, which is the feedback, the warm feeling and fuzzy feeling that we feel inside after sharing it and making it. But it's a grind, right? Mm-hmm. So I want to speak to you about difficulties and what you found challenging in making this.
Well, first and foremost, I think the fact that I'm here talking to you is one of the, in your platform with Shonda Studios, that the editing is the most challenging. I feel like that leads to burnout the quickest, is being able to have this wonderful story with somebody, and I already know I'm very long-winded. So sometimes these interviews go on for such a long time, and I have to sit there again and listen to it and editing it. So I would say that's definitely a challenge. But I think finding a team. I mean, I didn't go into podcasting with the intention of hiring an editor, hiring a social media person, hiring all these people, but I really have to in order for this thing to grow, because I can't do it all. But in that, you think about the resources that you need. And so while podcasting for some people is a hobby, it does become a business, because you have to put out money for it to grow. And so, I've been talking to people about ways to grow this podcast and monetize it, and having certain people on the show that could, with their audience, it would increase my audience, but then it takes away from the storytelling. For me, it becomes less fun. And so it's this balancing act of like what I really want this to be, which is I really want it to be like I'm sharing people's, like, I don't know, their lives, their stories. I want it to be like sort of like documentary style, but for your ears, like podcasting. But then I'm also like, well, I need to make money on this if I want to grow it. So I would say those are some of my challenges right now.
That's such a fair and valid point. I know when I started mine, I think most people, when they start theirs, it's just a pure itch to hear a particular perspective expressed. And then after you get some momentum, you're like, damn, this is kind of a lot of work to do alone, you know? And then you're like,
Totally.
damn, this is kind of costing me a lot of money to put together. And then you then say, well, okay, how can I offset my costs? Maybe I find a sponsor. Maybe I'll go and do the sponsor, or maybe. And then I think one thing we never think of asking. I saw, for example, full disclosure, with my podcast, I did like a fundraiser. One of my guests was great, and she was sending kids to school during the pandemic. And then we were like, hey, let's just put out a fundraiser and see who will support. And then people send money, and I was like, whoa! I didn't realize it was a very small, like not a big audience, like 200 listeners, monthly listeners. It wasn't that big, but people supported. So I was like, whoa! I sometimes think we don't really fully appreciate the power of this, even these small audience that we're building. So I guess what I was going to ask with you is, have you thought about maybe, of course, you've gone the sponsorship route. I think I've seen that on some of your episodes. Have you thought about just asking your audience for the support, or is that kind of like not a consideration yet? I don't know if you've thought about that.
I've thought about that. And it's weird for me.
It feels weird. I know.
It does. It feels a little icky for me. And considering I came from a sales background, so I know how to ask for money. So I don't know what it is. I just, I don't know, but I think that there are people that really love what we do and are willing to pay for it. Yeah. And so I think it's a me problem.
But no, I think it's more than a you problem. I think I want to unpack the icky feeling, because there are a lot of other platforms, like let's say Substack,
Right.
where people say, hey, I'm writing my blog or I'm writing my newsletter. They'll use whatever tool is like, it's my newsletter. If you want to, advertise on this thing, you can support it if you want. And then when it comes to writing, people gladly support. Maybe because we're trained to know that words have value, and in a book fashion, and we're used to exchanging that. But no, it's words, like actual like speech without on a text. I don't know. It feels like, well, I do it for free all the time, every day. It feels weird to charge for it. But at the same time, people are listening to it, right? So, and people want to support, to your point. But I want to ask you how you feel. Why is it icky? Like, what is that ick feeling? Does it feel like maybe I'll get the ball rolling? Does it feel like, I don't know. I think for me, it kind of felt like maybe there's an assumption that I'm doing okay already, and asking for money feels weird. So why would he need money? His life seems okay. But I think it's more a case of, no, but I'm making something, right? I don't know. So that was my perspective. Did you have a different feeling? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's that. And then I also, I don't know, I'm very competitive with myself. And so for me, I look at my numbers like every day, and I'm like, I want my numbers to be higher. And so I feel like once I get to those numbers, then I can ask for money. But I'm like, is anyone listening right now? But they are. So again, I think it goes back to, it's a me thing. I just need to like get over that little hump.
I think you need to find a way around, not around this, but I think everyone has such different feelings about this. I mean, I met a girl, Andrea, who's wonderful, and she was on like episode 7, and she was like, hey, everyone, I'm starting a podcast. Here's my Patreon if you guys want to support. And she's getting like $250, per month off this thing. I was like, it's episode 7?
What?
It was like, yes. I was like, I didn't. So anyway, I think everyone, it's just, there's not enough information about, and it's not about wanting to take advantage. It's a thing of, hey, I'm putting a lot of effort to give you guys this information and these stories. It would really go a long way and help me do it more sustainably if I got some support on top of what I'm doing right now. Because right now I'm just, paying out of my pocket. So that's one of the things we kind of want to talk about, because I think it's something that we have to talk about more, and we can find a way to maybe standardize it not standardize it, but just make it more transparent for people. But that's a future thing.
No, that's good. I mean, after you just told me this woman was making $250 after 7 episodes, I'm starting my Substack today.
You're like, well, what? Substack?
Yeah.
Sure. No, it's something we definitely want to build into what we're making as well in time. But, we'll get there. But I guess
Sure.
to bring it back to the future, I think you've done so many great things in capturing all of these stories, specifically about underrepresented people, people of color, women, and I think it's been so important. What do you want the big dream for this thing to be? Because I see the passion and energy, I can see it. There's a lot of passion, energy, going into in person with people, recording, and it's really cool to see. So you can always tell intention behind something being made. So I
Mhm.
guess with this intention, what's your dream for a bright idea? Your big dream?
Yeah. So I think my short term dream is to get it offline out of Zoom and go do some more in person documentary style, like longer form sit down interviews. That's definitely on the horizon in the near future. But I think that where I see a bright idea going is I would love to. I think podcasting is here to stay, storytelling is here to stay. And so I would love to create a bigger platform so that other people with podcasts could be in sort of like a network with like I would like own a network and other people could have their podcasts within my network. And it could be of whatever topics, whether I'm focusing on entrepreneurship, but there's a large portion of focus on mental health and wellness. I would love to see that comedy. I would love to see other storytellers under the Bright Idea umbrella in the future.
I love that. Do you see a future where people are doing this as this is what I do full time? Like in the future, do you think that's where we're going to get to as a medium, as an example, or yeah, at the very least supplementary to what people do now? But do you see in the future, maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now, people say, yeah, I'm a podcaster, an independent one, but yeah, it's what I do. And I
Well,
suppose
that's the dream for me. So the answer is yes.
I have to believe.
have to believe it because that's on my vision board. So
Yeah.
yes, I can see it. And I know of, I mean, podcasters that I listen to, this is their full-time thing and it is totally independent. And so it can be done.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can't wait
I love.
for both of us to have that this is our only thing.
Yes. Well, my dream is to help, or our dream rather, with our team is to help facilitate that. Like that's the thing we feel very strongly about. I think I remember the first time getting behind just my first recording being like, whoa, that feels fantastic. That feels so fantastic. I wish I could just do this all the time, and it feels so fulfilling. And then you learn a bunch about it. Whoa, okay, this is not as easy as I thought it would be. But I think
Yeah,
having gone through it, I think if we can try and simplify those processes and standardize certain things, I think that will be an exciting world to live in. So,
totally.
but it's been great. It's been great. Lastly, what's on the vision board? What's there's that. What else do we have in the vision board? I listened to Bilal's vision board, and that was so cool to listen to. And
Isn't he the best?
man, it was so good because
Yeah,
I've literally gone through something similar before, where I wrote down. I write my goals down.
sure.
In the beginning, I would write, okay, when I graduated from college, I wrote like 5 things down, and then I put in a notebook, and I completely forgot about it. And then 5 years later, I was like, whoa, everything in the notebook was and there was outlandish stuff, but it all came to pass. And I remember being like, geez, this is. I remember even when I wrote the goals, it was just being like, dude, just write stuff that you think would be cool to happen. There's a high chance none of the stuff's gonna happen, but just write it down. And
Oh
like
yeah.
4 to 5 happened. So I was like, okay, so I write my goals down. I'm not a vision board person. I'm more of like I write them down. And every year I do this now. Just
Yeah,
so I'm guess with you, if you feel safe enough sharing, uh,
absolutely.
what you feel is on the horizon on your vision board.
I think career wise on the vision board is what I had mentioned, turning this into a network. And I, what I've learned from talking to a lot of entrepreneurs is like this storytelling, service based business, like those are good, but it's a lot of work. I would love to create a product of some sort so that I can make money in my sleep. My first business was a greeting cards business. I made stationery. And so I'm I'm a letter writer. I love sending a greeting card to people. So I would love to create journals or greeting cards of some sort and have a line. But then enough about work. I just got into tennis recently.
Ooh.
Um,
Paddle or like pickleball or tennis?
no, tennis. Like,
lovely.
Yeah, the real deal. And I grew up running track my whole life. So from the age of 10 through college, I was a distance runner. And so I am very competitive. Like nothing that I do, like there's nothing in my life that I'm not like, I'm gonna win. It's so weird. Like the intensity is so bad. Sometimes I have to be like, Amber, chill. Like it's just Uno. Right. Like why are we getting competitive? Right. But I started tennis recently and I love it because I'm not good at it yet, but I am determined to be good.
That's good. I love being humbled. I love being humbled by a sport. But it's like, oh, I'm humbled, but this is fun. This is different. Yeah. And then you want to get better and better.
Yeah. And I'm using parts of my body that I've never used before. And so that's really cool. And then just to, travel, and I would love to live abroad. So
interesting. Yeah. Whereabouts?
I really would love to live in England for some time, London most specifically. And that's like on my 5-year plan. I plan to leave this country. But short term, like I would come back.
Like for indefinitely or just
no. Maybe like 3 to 5 years. Like I would love to just live somewhere else, just to be an outsider for a second. Yeah.
I think also sometimes when you have a different perspective on a place, I think you see it and you might just think you're Amber, but then you might leave and be like, oh, I'm Amber the American. And you might not, even though you're American, like when you're somewhere else, you're like, oh, no. I feel differently about the place that I come from because I'm looking at it from a distance. And that can be, leaving where you come from, I think is always a good thing. Just to look at it and feel who you are elsewhere versus when you're in it. That's, so I think that'll be great. So I love that for you. So, so we pray all that stuff comes to fruition. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. It's been wonderful. Keep all these amazing stories that you do. And yeah, we look forward to hearing more bright ideas.
Thank you. This was great. I appreciate you having me on the show, and I wish you the best and continue doing what you're doing because it's awesome.
Thank you. All right, Amber, take care. Bye.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning into Transformation Tales. We hope these stories inspired you to keep creating and sharing your voice with the world. Remember, every storyteller's journey is unique, but the courage to start and persist unites us all. Join us next week for more empowering tales of transformation.